Okay, so the next video is going to be looking at the 10 mark questions. Now the 10 mark questions, they're explain questions, and generally they are very, very similar to the ones from Crime and Punishment. So we've got 10 mark questions, and for these answers you are writing 3 point and develop link paragraphs. The link is really important, so remember that when you are doing your link, that link means link it back to the question. Make sure you're explaining what the question is asking you. So always remember in your link, am I answering what the question is asking me? So for this first question here, what was the impact of Harold Bluetooth's reign upon Denmark? So what was the impact of Harold Bluetooth's reign upon Denmark? Explain your answer. Pause the video here, annotate this question, and then write down what your 3 PDL points are going to be. Okay, so if I'm annotating this question here, I'm looking for the impact of Harold Bluetooth's reign upon Denmark. So impact of Harold Bluetooth's reign upon Denmark. So when I'm linking, I need to be explaining what was the impact. I link to explain what was the impact of Harold Bluetooth's reign. My 3 points for this, number 1 would be the conversion to Christianity. My point number 2 would be connecting his people. And I would say that number 3 would be defending his people. Or defending his nation. Okay, now I want you to turn over. I want you to have a go at, again, annotate your question, and then have a go at filling in your point, develop, and link for each of these 3 points. Remember, it's conversion to Christianity, connecting his people, and defending his nation. Pause the video now. Okay, so our first point is conversion to Christianity. Our second point is about connecting his people. And the third point is about defending his nation. So we'll start with the conversion to Christianity. We know the conversion to Christianity happened in 865. The whole nation was converted. We could also talk about yelling, new runestone, the yelling with the new runestone, and reburying his father, Gorm the Old. Put GTO, Gorm the Old, as well. Now in the link, we need to explain what the impact was on Denmark. So what was the impact on Denmark? Arguably here, Harold Bluetooth converts to Christianity, not because he is a true Christian, but for defensive reasons, because he wants to prevent attacks from the German lands below to the south of Denmark. So we could argue in our link that the impact was reducing the threat of attack or invasion because of the conversion to Christianity, because the German lands, the Germans from the south are not going to attack fellow Christians in theory. Okay, so fellow Christians, reduced threat of invasion or attack, particularly German lands to the south. So what's the impact? I'm going to highlight that in pink. What is the impact? You can argue as a reduced threat and therefore more stable control. The next one is about connecting his people. Now, Harold Bluetooth does a lot of things to connect his people. We could talk about moving the capital from Yelling to Roskilde. The reason for this is to do with his position, more central position. Also to do with the fact that it has a full harbour, so it has harbour access. So he connects his people through that. You could also argue he connects his people through the building of bridges, particularly the one at Ravening Edge. I'll put an arrow up here just for a bit more space. That goes across marshland, and it improves trade. It connects people and it improves trade. So then that could lead you into your link, where again you're talking about the impact. The impact of this is that it increases the economy, it increases trade, particularly the building of the bridge at Ravening Edge. So increased trade, better ability to travel. So they would be your key impacts there. That because of the bridge at Ravening Edge, it improves trade, because it takes them across marshland, the biggest bridge at the time. It increases the trade because of people's better ability to travel across tricky terrain. Okay, and our final point is about defence. Now, Harold Bluetooth does a number of things to defend his kingdom of Denmark. He builds walls around his key trading towns. So he builds the walls around Hedeby, Ribe, and Aarhus. He also builds 4 forts. The most famous of those is Trelleborg. And the Trelleborg forts, he builds those in 980. And they help him to control the local area, subdue chiefs, but also defend from any attacks coming from the south. So then in our link, we need to explain what the impact of this defence is. Safer trading towns. Which leads to their growth. And the forts bring better control of southern regions close to the border, and that's the border with the German lands in the south. So the impact on Denmark is the safer trading towns mean growth and greater wealth. The impact here, we could also talk about better control of the southern regions because of close to the border, because of the building of these forts. Okay, so our next question. What was the impact of the Great Heathen Army's invasion of England? Explain your answer with examples. Pause now, annotate the question, and your 3 points, please. Okay, so if I'm annotating this question, I'm looking at what was the impact of the Great Heathen Army's invasion of England. So it's all about, again, linking back in our answer, linking back to what was the impact of the Great Heathen Army. So that's the link, what was the impact. My 3 points here, I would talk about the Danelaw as an impact of the invasion. I would talk about Jorvik as an impact of the invasion. And I would also talk about the Treaty of Wedmore. For each one here, what's the impact? For Jorvik, we could talk about its great wealth. For the Danelaw, we could talk about its new culture and customs. And for the Treaty of Wedmore, we could talk about the splitting of England and the creation of the Danelaw. Okay, turn your page over. Annotate your question. Write our 3 points in. Danelaw, Jorvik, Treaty of Wedmore, and fill in what you're going to write. Pause the video. Okay, so again, impact of the Great Heathen Army's invasion of England. We're linking back and talking about the impact. So our points are the Danelaw, Jorvik, and the Treaty of Wedmore, the splitting of England. Okay, so the Danelaw is created in 878 from the Treaty of Wedmore. The Danelaw follows Danish rules or Danish laws and customs. There is lots of Saxon Viking intermarrying. The Danelaw, you could also say, is held for 50 years. In our link, then, we need to be thinking about what the impact of the Danelaw is. Well, thinking about the impact of the Danelaw, there are lots of Saxon and Viking intermarrying, so we could focus there on the impact of the assimilation, a change in the DNA of the country in the north and east regions. That could be a good way to start, talking about how they assimilated very quickly and therefore had children and how they changed the national DNA. So we'll go with that. So we could say quick Viking assimilation, intermarrying and children, and then the impact is that it changes the DNA in North and East England, or North and East areas, which are the Danelaw. So one impact of the Danelaw there would be the change in the DNA of people due to intermarrying between Danes and Saxons. The next one is Jorvik. Now, York is originally captured in 866 by the Great Heathen Army on their way up from East Anglia. So it's captured in 866, way up from East Anglia. Remember when the king of the East Angles gives them horses and they use those horses to ride up north. So in 866 they capture York. York becomes a powerful and a wealthy place. We also know there's many craftsmen and worldwide trade. We could also give that fact as well we've used before, which is that by the year 1000 there is a population of 10,000 people, which is significant for the time. So then what's the impact of all this? Well, York becomes a very wealthy place. So York becomes a very wealthy place due to crafts, trade, and this can be seen by the fact that in Jorvik the Vikings then mint their own coins. Finally, we've got the Treaty of Wedmore. Now, there might seem a little bit of overlap here, but this is a different point because our link is going to be different. So we explain that the Treaty of Wedmore was between Guthrum and Alfred of Wessex. So it's between Guthrum and Alfred of Wessex. They agree that he will have the south and west. So the south and west goes to Alfred, and the north and east goes to Guthrum and the Vikings. And this all happens in the year 878. So what's the impact then of the Treaty of Wedmore? Well, the impact of the Treaty of Wedmore, firstly, is that England is split into two kingdoms. England is crucially split into two kingdoms, one of which is completely ruled by the Danes. You could also say that it has a long-lasting impact because the Vikings keep control of the Danelaw for 50 years. So the impact of the Great Heathen Army's invasion is that England gets split into two, and it has a long-lasting impact because split into two, and one half of England, the Danelaw, is controlled by the Danes. So that would be our link there, linking back to what the impact is on England. Let's turn back now and look at our final one. We're going to explain why Svein Forkbeard is generally seen as a strong and effective leader. Explain why Svein Forkbeard is generally seen as a strong and effective leader. Pause the video now, annotate your question, and write 3 key points for your 3 PDL paragraphs. Okay, so if we're annotating this question, explain why Svein Forkbeard is generally seen as a strong and effective leader. So we need to be explaining why he is seen as a strong and effective leader. So our link needs to be explaining why his actions that we choose to write about, why his actions are seen as strong and effective. The 3 things that I would talk about, we could talk about him winning back the throne, or winning back lost lands. We know that he loses the lands of Denmark and Norway, so we can talk about how he sort of wins those back. The second point that I would talk about would be his political alliance. He marries the Eric of Sweden. When he dies, he marries his widow, Sigrid, and how that forms a sort of political bond between Norway and Sweden, protecting its lands. And then the final thing I would talk about would be him expelling German bishops from Denmark and inviting English ones. Okay. Turn the page. I want you to annotate your question and write in the points that you would talk about for this answer. So explain why Svein Forkbeard is generally seen as a strong and effective leader. So we need to be explaining why his actions that we've chosen make him seen as a strong and effective leader. I would first say that his political alliance, well, we did that second, didn't we? So winning back the throne, his second point would be his political alliance with Sweden, and his third point would be about expelling German bishops and inviting English ones. So we'll start with winning back his lands then. We'll start by winning back his lands. So you could firstly say that he wins back Hedeby in 983, which was lost by his father, Harald Bluetooth. You could also say he regains Norway from Olaf Tryggvason when he's betrayed by Tryggvason. I can't remember how many G's are in Tryggvason. So he regains Norway from Tryggvason in 996 and also regains Denmark from Eric of Sweden in 995. So we've given specific detail with specific dates. Now we need to explain how this shows him to be a strong and effective leader. So I would argue here that he is shown as a strong and effective leader because he is winning back lands and establishing, so he's winning back lands which his father lost, so Hedeby, and were taken when he was in England. I would also argue that he is a strong and effective leader because by winning back these territories, he creates an empire, not an empire. He controls far more lands than his father did. So I would explain your links here. He wins back lands which his father lost, and he wins back lands which were taken when he was in England. And this shows that he's a strong and effective leader because he then ends up controlling far more lands than his father did. So this makes him strong and effective because he wins back the lands in relatively quick succession. 983 before he's king Hedeby. Then he goes to Denmark and gets that back from Eric of Sweden, 995. And then swiftly afterwards regains Norway from Olaf Tryggvason in 996. The next point we could talk about is the political alliance with Sweden. So there is a bit of a troubled history because Sweden takes Denmark when Svein is in England, raiding in England. So when Eric of Sweden dies, he marries his widow for a political alliance. So marries widow. She's called Sigrid. By all accounts, she was a very, very fierce lady. So in the link then, we need to explain how this shows he is a strong and effective leader. Well, firstly, this shows political awareness. Because he is protecting his country. So he's protecting his nation and lands from Swedish attack. Through this political alliance. So it's a very clever way of protecting his lands, and it shows he's a strong and effective leader because he is protecting his nations through this political alliance. It shows political awareness from Swedish attack. The final point to argue that Svein Forkbeard is a strong and effective leader would be the fact that he expels German bishops from the Danish Christian Church, and he invites English ones. So our final point is about expelling German bishops and inviting English ones. So he expels German bishops from the Danish Christian Church and invites English ones in their place. So he boosts Christianity in Denmark. He expels German bishops and replaces them with English bishops from the English Christian Church. How does this show that he is a strong and effective leader? Well, shows strong and effective leadership because it removes the German threat. We know that Germany or the German lands have invaded or tried to invade in the past and taken Hedeby. So it removes the German threat and influence. And not only is it removing that threat, but also by consolidating and supporting the church, he's consolidating his own power. By supporting and strengthening the church. So it's a clever two-way decision here because not only does it make his land safer and more secure by removing the German threat and influence, but also he consolidates his own power by supporting and strengthening the church, who then in turn they will support him more. So highlighting the key points, he removes the German threat, so his lands are safer and more secure from any sort of invasion, and he consolidates his own power because the church in turn will then support him.